Hey there, YouTube. This is Caster87 again, and today I'm bringing you I told you I would in the why to play frogs that I would sort of go into like the different variants and tributes and stuff you can run because I figured that would be a whole nother episode. So that's what we're bringing today. My favorite variant of frogs is Lancer frogs, and that's exactly what I'm going to bring to light today. Now, starting off, we have Sea Lancer, who is the whole point of the deck. I mean, uh, the reason to run the deck and to abuse Ronan as much as possible. Now, Sea Lancer was a TCG exclusive, was a while ago, and it's a rare, so it's actually really cheap and easy to get. It's very stats upon looking. It's a level 5 and 1300, which seem really pathetic, but its effect is where its power comes in. Once, while he's face up on the field, you can target any number of your banished fish, sea serpent, and aqua type monsters and equip them to this card. This effect can only be used once while this card is face up on the field. If this face up card on the field would be destroyed, you can destroy one of those equipped cards instead. This card gains 1,000 attack while equipped with any number of monsters by this effect. So essentially, you use Ronin Totem to banish frogs, and you get out Sea Lancer and equip those frogs to him. And then he gains 1,000 attack. Like I said, no matter how many equips, people get confused about that effect, and it goes up to 23 alone or 2,700 with a Gotchi next to him. And then like he would have to be destroyed multiple times, and then while he's destroying, you gain advantage through the frogs you banished for him. Now, I'm going to go into a few little confusing rulings that people always ask about Sea Lancer. One, if Sea Lancer would be Sea Lancer's the equips can miss the timing only if Sea Lancer is used as a cost or some part of an effect that does not end with Sea Lancer being destroyed. Like if someone uses a Soul Exchange and tributes for him, they will miss the timing because the last thing that happened was a tributed monster. If you tribute him, you miss the effect because your summon was the last thing to happen, and so on and so forth. However, if Sea Lancer is bounced to your hand or banished by something like Dimensional Prison, all the equipped cards effect will activate. And if you have multiples that would activate at the same time, simultaneous effects go on chain comes into play. And they activate, and then you declare a chain between all your optional effects, and then they work. But yeah, I know a lot of people ask me that. A lot of people have asked online about that to the other Sea Lancer players, so I thought I would bring that up before I continued. Now, Sea Lancer being not being able to be destroyed a couple times is really nice, but the added benefit is the frogs that you attach to him. Now, first off is Poison Draw Frog, and then we also have Dupe Frog, with both of which I discussed in length in the frog video. And I'm losing my voice. But I brought them up again because this is where we get into why you use Poison Draw Frog in the first place. Because if you're not running Sea Lancer, like I said, you don't run Poison Draw Frog. But if you are running Poison Draw Frog, you use it for Sea Lancer because it's one of the frogs you're going to want banished, because if you equip it to Sea Lancer, essentially, like, because the way the Poison Draw Frog's effect is worded, he can, as long if he's face up as an equip card, he still counts as a face up card on the field and being sent to the graveyard. So essentially, if your opponent would try to destroy Sea Lancer, you send Poison Draw Frog and then draw a card. It's that simple. It's just like, oh, instead of dying, Sea Lancer just draws me a card. I'm cool with that. The same goes for Dupe Frog. Although it's less helpful to like just search for a frog instead of drawing a card, but it can still be really good. I mean, like if you only have one Poison Draw Frog, or you can't get like Poison Draw Frogs in the grave because you only have so many swap frogs to activate, and you had a Dupe Frog from set and destroyed, and that's how you got your swap frog. Dupe Frog is actually a good secondary card. essentially when equipped to Lancer, he will get hit and sent to the graveyard. He will get his effect of either getting a frog from the deck or from the graveyard. And that's actually important because in late game, when all your frogs are out of your deck, you can just start adding swap frogs back to your hand to just throw on the field again for extra rank twos, which I've done in plenty of times. In fact, even if you want to, I've seen Lancer variants that don't run Poison Draw Frog at all and just rely on Dupe Frog for a Sea Lancer's effect. And I've done it. I sided Poison Draw Frog out completely in some of my duels and just relied on Dupe Frog, and I still win. It's really just like it's still advantage through Sea Lancer. It's not necessarily has to be just general cards. You can use the frogs you get to make a lot of advantage. And now the other tributes you might be using for this deck, and I forgot one. First off, we have Light and Darkness Dragon, which a lot of people have been running a lot today. Right there, Ryza. Okay. But Light and Darkness Dragon has always been a really good frog card. And in Lancer Frogs, when you start milling Ronins, a lot of Ronins and Treeborn on purpose, it gets really easy to summon it. And essentially he just eats up a bunch of monsters, and then you can follow it up by like when he's finally destroyed by his own effect, you can just revive a Sea Lancer and then just equip it again on your turn, and then now your opponent has to deal with the fact that they lost all the resources to Light and Darkness Dragon just to kill it, and now they have to deal with an equipped Sea Lancer as well. And once your opponent's out of like their viable resources, you're going to start winning just through sheer advantage. And like one of the cool things I've always liked is Swap Frog can actually bounce a Light and Darkness Dragon once. Well, because like the Swap Frog effect is still it's a cost, so you can still pay it. And then Light and Darkness Dragon, if it was still on the field, it would try to stop swap, but it can't because now it's in your hand. So essentially, like you can recycle Light and Darkness Dragon a couple times if your opponent cannot destroy it right away each time. But there's that, and the next one is the kind of the staple monarch that people have been running is Caius. He's pretty simple, just like it's always a staple for regular monarchs decks, and like a lot of people still use him. I dropped it myself, but I used to use him, and he was good at times. Just when this card attributes summon, target one card in the field, banish the target, and if you do, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. And there's always the option of targeting himself and banishing himself, so you burn your opponent for 1,000 sometimes game. But it's kind of pretty self-explanatory. Now Ryza, people like Ryza less. Regular Monarch decks will run him just because like they'll all run all their Caius and be like, what can I run next? It'll be like, then next is Ryza. And he returns a target to the top of the deck when he's tribute summoned, which is, like I said, not as good as just removing it. But like if it targets a Synchro or XYZ, then they're just returned to the extra deck, so it could still do a lot. And then it could also start messing with the opponent. But the reason I'm bringing it up here is because it's wind. And for Daigusto Phoenix, he becomes a double attacking 2,400 next to a 1,500. And it can lead to a lot of like games right there. I'm still not running it myself just because I think Daigusto Phoenix is powerful enough on its own. But it's an option for you. Now, the other attribute that I'm running, because I right now I'm just running Sea Lancer in this in one build, but is Obelisk. And Obelisk is awesome. And I love to summon him and get him out. Now, he needs 3 tributes, and he cannot be normal set, and he can be special summoned, but he's destroyed at the end phase when you special him. But his normal summon cannot be negated. And when he's normal summoned, cards and effects cannot be activated. So essentially, you can't negate his summon, and you cannot respond to his summon. And then he cannot be targeted by spells, traps, or card effects. So it makes him really hard to kill. He essentially has to be killed either by battle, which is hard to do when he's 4,000 attack, but there are certain shenanigan cards that can get around him. Like other frog decks can just summon Dark Mist and run him over that way, I don't know if that affects targets. I have to think about that. It probably does. Never mind. But essentially he just comes out. He's hard to kill. He can only be killed by an effect that doesn't target. like Dark Hole, Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force. Also things like Allied Justice Catastor has been summoned quite a few times when I get out Obelisk. But a lot of times, a lot of decks just cannot deal with the Obelisk's effect. Now sometimes I can't get out Obelisk because I can't get like enough actual tributes sometimes against certain decks, but then again, other decks like Chaos Dragons they used to, Obelisk was really good because they essentially had one out, and that was Dark Hole because they didn't run traps. So essentially, like Obelisk, oh, I guess I have game, pretty much. Oh well. um, and he also has an add effect where you contribute 2 monsters and destroy a monster your opponent controls, and then he can't declare an attack with this turn. The turn this effect is activated, which is easy to do because you're still playing frogs, and you can still make a couple Ronins or a Treeborn or something, and then tribute those off to like Regeki or your opponent if they have too many monsters. But that's Obelisk. I right now I run a trap build that just runs 3 Sea Lancer, and then just 1 Obelisk. But I might be changing it to a build with 3 Sea Lancer and then 3 of this, Poseidra the Atlantean Dragon. I'll actually, like, after I'm gonna do this video, I will bring up my current list for that, and I'll show that in a separate video. But we have Poseidra the Atlantean Dragon, which just came out today. Yeah, it just came out today for most places anyway. I don't have any copies of it yet, but he's the boss monster of the Atlantean structure deck. Although he really has nothing to do with the Atlanteans, because he's very different, and so you wouldn't actually use him alongside Atlanteans, but you can use him in here. Now, he's a level 7. He's 2,800. And he's a 2 tribute monster, but you wouldn't actually want to tribute him that way, because you're going to want to tribute him his effect way. Is that you can tribute 3 level 3 or lower water monsters you control, and special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. Now, from the graveyard means you can, like, as long as you keep summoning Ronins and stuff, you can keep getting him back. And then when he's special summoned by this effect, I'll return all spell and trap cards on the field of the hand. So basically, if you get him out and his summon is successful, you Giant Trunade the field. And then if 3 or more were returned, all monsters your opponent controls lose 300 attack for each return this way. So if there was a bunch on the field, if you and your opponent had a couple cards each, then your opponent's monsters are going to lose a lot of attack. And they're going to get, and now their back row is clear, so they're going to get face stomped. But essentially what the benefit from Poseidra is, outside of the fact that it just kind of clears the path, is that he is infinitely recurable as long as you have food, as long as you have frog food for him. And I can even like do Treeborn in the standby phase, 1 Ronin, summon Swap Frog, and then like normal summon Swap Frog, and then I can just special summon Poseidra by tributing those 3. But the reason someone discovered is that Poseidra will bounce Sea Lancer's equips for you. And now this can actually lead to really insane plays. Now just like think of like there's actually multiple ways you can do this. Like Sea Lancer with like when you're using the Poseidra build, you're actually going to be wanting to banish Poison Draw Frogs and Swap Frogs instead of like dupes instead. So essentially you're going to have like a couple Poison Draw Frogs and maybe a swap attached to Sea Lancer. Now, what you do is you get out Sea Lancer with a few equips attached to him, and then you get out Poseidra when you can, and then you return all the frogs you had attached to Sea Lancer to your hand. And now you can do a few things with these frogs in your hand. One, you have returned all your banished frogs back to your hand, and now you can use the Swap Frog to mill even more frogs from your deck into the graveyard, thinning your deck and getting the entire frog engine into your graveyard very quickly. You can use multiple Swap Frogs to special them to the field to make rank 2s without using any of your Ronin fodder. So essentially, you can drop the swaps and then use a Ronin to make more rank 2s. And essentially, Poseidra will allow with its giant Trunade effect and then returning the stuff to your hand will probably lead to many Daigusto Phoenix OTKs. Just because he's a 28 beater, he reduces your opponent's monster's attack. He has a giant Trunade, and then he's going to return frogs to your hand to allow you to resummon them. And like somewhere along the way, like the Sea Lancer that has been used up because it was equipped, you can just bounce to your hand with a swap frog. But one of the last things you can do with your frogs is that the reason you're going to want to poison draw frog is because you're going to want to put poison draw frogs on the field, and then summon swap frog. And one of the secret things that people don't realize about Swap Frog is that when he is summoned, you can send one level 2 or lower aqua water monster from your deck or your field to the graveyard. And Swap Frog can actually activate Poison Draw Frog and Dupe Frog, both in this way. So essentially, like, you can bounce them and then manually draw off your swaps while returning. But yeah, so Poseidra can lead to a lot of shenanigan plays, and I would really want to try it out. Now, like, if I would recommend at least 2 if you're gonna make a Poseidra build. Like, you can run one as attack, but if you want to do a centralized Poseidra build, I would recommend 2. But that is what I got for sort of like the actual lineup you're gonna want for a Sea Lancer deck. A lot of the other like stuff you're gonna fill in the deck with, I kind of discussed during Frogs. So just apply to that, and then I'm going to show you my Poseidra build in another video in a second here. So this is Chaos Reaper 87 out for now.